February 28, 2026. The desert sky above the Persian Gulf is the color of cold steel. Captain Daniel Mercer of the United States Marine Corps sits in the open door of a V-22 Osprey as it cuts through the dark. Wine tears across his face, whipping sand and salt into the cabin. Below them, the black water stretches endlessly toward the coast of Iran. Mercer checks his watch again. 2:17. The war hasn't been announced yet. Not officially, but everyone in this aircraft knows what tonight means. Across from him, Corporal Ramirez tightens the strap on his helmet. The green glow from the cabin lights paints every face in ghostly shadows. Nobody jokes. Nobody talks. They've all seen the briefing. Satellite images, missile launch sites, all terminals burning, and the final slide, one cold sentence. Hostilities expected within hours. Mercer taps his rifle, an M27, infantry automatic rifle, checking the chamber out of habit. The weapon feels heavier tonight. 30 seconds. The crew chief shouts over the roar of rotors. Through the open ramp, Mercer sees it. The coastline, dim lights scattered along the harbor of Bandar Abbas, one of Iran's most important naval ports. Cargo cranes stand like skeletons against the horizon. Somewhere down there, Iranian Revolutionary Guard naval forces are preparing something. Intelligence believes anti-ship missiles are about to be deployed against U.S. fleets in the Gulf. Washington wants eyes on the ground. Mercer's team is the first step. A small reconnaissance unit, 8 Marines, drop in, confirm the missiles, get out before anyone knows they were there. At least, that was the plan. The Osprey tilts downward. Sandstorms swirl along the coastline. Clouds of dust rolling across the empty desert like smoke from an unseen fire. 2 minutes. The pilot calls. Mercer leans toward Ramirez. Remember, he says quietly, we're ghosts tonight. Ramirez nods. But even ghosts can bleed. Below them, headlights suddenly flicker along a desert road. Military trucks. More than expected. Mercer frowns. The intel briefing never mentioned a convoy. The Osprey descends lower. Too low now to turn back. And then, a flash of light erupts from the ground. Mercer's instincts scream before his brain catches up. Missile. A streak of fire launches upward from the desert. Someone down there already knows they're coming. The missile races toward the aircraft like a spear of white fire. And for the first time in 20 years of war, Captain Daniel Mercer realizes something terrifying. This operation may have started the war itself. The missile climbs through the night like a blade of fire. Inside the Osprey, the cockpit alarms erupt instantly. Missile lock, brake right, the pilot shouts. The aircraft jerks violently. Captain Daniel Mercer grips the cargo netting as the entire cabin tilts. The desert horizon spins outside the open ramp. Marines slam against their harnesses as the aircraft dives toward the coastline. The missile is fast, too fast. The pilot dumps flares, bright suns bursting behind them, scattering sparks across the sky. For a split second the night becomes daylight. Mercer watches through the open ramp as the missile tears through the flares, hunting the aircraft. Then, it veers. The missile explodes behind them in a blinding white flash, lighting up the entire desert like lightning. The shockwave slams the aircraft. Metal groans. Warning lights flood the cockpit. Engine 2 took damage. The co-pilot yells. Smoke begins curling through the rear cabin. Mercer feels the aircraft struggling to stay airborne. They're only a few miles from the coast of Bandar Abbas now, and the enemy knows exactly where they are. Below them, headlights scatter across the desert road. The convoy Mercer spotted earlier suddenly accelerates. Armored trucks, anti-air batteries. This isn't random. It's an ambush. Mercer's mind races through the briefing again. Their mission is reconnaissance observe. Iranian missile deployment believed to be controlled by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. No engagement, no firefight, just eyes and confirmation. But someone on the ground clearly got the message first. Captain, Ramirez shouts. More launches. Mercer leans out the ramp. 3 more bright streaks ignite from the desert. Surface-to-air missiles, coming straight at them. The pilot curses. We can't outrun 3. The aircraft drops lower, skimming barely 100 feet above the sand. Dust storms swirl beneath them like ocean waves. The coastline appears ahead, dark water of the Persian Gulf, crashing against rocky beaches. Mercer knows what the pilot is thinking before he says it. We're too hot. The pilot yells back into the cabin. They've got radar on us, meaning the landing zone is compromised, meaning the mission is already blown. Mercer looks around the aircraft. 8 Marines. No armor support. No extraction backup for at least 6 hours. If they abort now, Washington loses its only eyes on the missile batteries. But if they continue, they're landing directly inside enemy defenses. Ramirez studies Mercer's face. What's the call, sir? Outside, the incoming missiles burn closer through the sky. Seconds left. Mercer thinks about the satellite images, the warnings, the fleets waiting in the Gulf. If those missiles launch tonight, thousands could die. He grabs the radio headset. Pilot, Mercer says calmly, put us down. The crew chief stares at him in disbelief. That's a hot zone. Mercer chambers around in his rifle. Yeah, he replies quietly. Welcome to the first battle. The Osprey slams into its descent. Wind howls through the open ramp as the aircraft drops hard toward the desert floor. Captain Daniel Mercer feels the pressure change in his ears as the pilot forces the tiltrotor lower and faster. Below them, the sandstorm thickens. Visibility drops to almost nothing. It's the only thing keeping them alive. Behind the aircraft, the incoming missiles slash through the sky like burning arrows. Their guidance systems struggle as the Osprey dives into the swirling wall of dust. Flares out. The crew chief shouts. More blazing decoys burst behind the aircraft, scattering sparks across the storm. One missile overshoots. Another spirals wildly. The third keeps coming. Mercer braces himself against the door frame as the coastline disappears beneath the aircraft. They are now flying only a few meters above the desert floor outside Bandar Abbas. The pilot pushes the engines harder. The aircraft roars forward through the storm. Then, a massive explosion erupts behind them. The final missile detonates inside the dust cloud. The shockwave punches the aircraft again, rattling the entire fuselage. Warning alarms scream. Hydraulics are dropping. The co-pilot shouts. Mercer feels the Osprey shudder. They're not getting out of this clean. Landing now? The pilot yells. The aircraft banks sharply toward a stretch of barren desert just beyond the Iranian convoy. Mercer looks down through the storm. He finally sees it. A cluster of radar vehicles and missile launchers sitting in the sand. Exactly what intelligence warned about. Mobile anti-ship missile batteries. If these launch, the fleets in the Persian Gulf will be exposed, and the convoy moving toward them. It's escorting the launch systems. Ramirez leans beside Mercer, staring through the blowing sand. That's a lot more hardware than the briefing said. Mercer nods. At least 15 vehicles. Maybe more. This isn't a reconnaissance target anymore. It's a battlefield. The Osprey suddenly slams downward. The landing gear punches into the sand with brutal force. Dust explodes around the aircraft as the rotors scream overhead. Go, go, go. The crew chief roars. Mercer jumps from the ramp first, boots sinking into soft sand. Cold desert wind whips across his face. Behind him the rest of the Marine team fans out quickly, rifles scanning the darkness. The Osprey lifts again immediately, engines roaring as it climbs back into the sandstorm. They're alone now. 8 Marines, deep inside enemy territory in Iran. Mercer drops to one knee and studies the convoy through his night vision. Headlights glow faintly through the dust. Engines rumble. Soldiers move between vehicles. Then he sees something that makes his stomach tighten. Large cylindrical launchers mounted on trucks. Anti-ship missiles. And technicians are already preparing them. Ramirez whispers beside him, "Sir, they're getting ready to fire." Mercer grips his rifle tighter. The spotlight freezes on the ridge. For one silent second, the desert stops breathing. Captain Daniel Mercer feels the beam of white light wash over the sand just 20 meters from where his team lies hidden. Dust spins through the air like smoke, glowing inside the harsh glare. Someone in the convoy has seen movement. Mercer slowly lowers himself behind a broken ridge of rock, heart steady but fast. Around him, the 7 Marines of his reconnaissance team flatten into the sand. No one moves. No one speaks. Below them, engines idle as the Iranian convoy crawls forward across the desert outside Bandar Abbas. Through his night vision, Mercer sees soldiers stepping out of trucks, dark uniforms belonging to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. There, rifles sweep across the desert as they search. One soldier points toward the ridge. Mercer's pulse tightens. They're too close. Ramirez inches beside him, voice barely a breath. "Sir, we've got maybe 15 troops down there." Mercer studies the convoy again. More vehicles are arriving from the highway. Radar trucks, missile launchers, fuel carriers. At least 20 vehicles now. This isn't just a missile team. It's a full launch battery. One of the technicians climbs onto a launcher and begins adjusting its guidance system. Another truck unfolds a radar dish slowly into the night sky. The missiles are almost ready. Mercer looks down at the small demolition charges in his pouch. Originally meant to photograph and report. Now they may have to destroy the entire battery. But first they must survive the patrol coming up the ridge. 4 Iranian soldiers begin climbing toward their position. Rifles raised, boots crunching softly in the sand. 20 meters. 15. 10. Mercer watches the closest soldier carefully. Young, nervous, finger tight on the trigger. Mercer knows the rules of reconnaissance. Avoid contact. Remain unseen. But those rules died the moment the missile locked onto their aircraft. Ramirez glances at him. Sir? Mercer exhales slowly. There's only one way this ends now. He lifts two fingers. Signal to fire. The Marines silently switch off their weapon safeties. The first Iranian soldier steps over the ridge. His flashlight beam sweeps across the sand and stops right on Mercer's rifle barrel. The soldier's eyes widen. He inhales to shout. Mercer pulls the trigger. The suppressed rifle cracks softly in the wind. The soldier collapses instantly, but the other three soldiers react immediately. Gunfire erupts across the ridge. Tracer rounds slash through the sandstorm. Below them, the convoy explodes into chaos as Iranian troops scramble for cover. Mercer shouts over the gunfire. Contact front. The silent reconnaissance mission is over. Now it's a firefight, and the entire missile battery is waking up. The first burst of gunfire shatters the desert silence. Tracer rounds streak across the ridge. Captain Daniel Mercer rolls behind a rock outcrop. Bullets snap through the sandstorm, kicking up bursts of dust inches from his helmet. Two down. Ramirez shouts. Another Iranian soldier tumbles backward down the slope, but the element of surprise is already gone. Below the ridge, the convoy erupts into motion. Soldiers scatter between the trucks, shouting commands in Persian. Headlights swing wildly as engines roar to life. Mercer peers through his night vision. What he sees makes his stomach tighten. Missile crews are still working, even with gunfire above them. Technicians from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps scramble over the launch vehicles, securing guidance panels and lining the cylindrical launch tubes toward the dark waters of the Persian Gulf. They're not stopping. They're preparing to fire anyway. A heavy machine gun suddenly opens up from one of the convoy trucks. The ridge explodes with sand as rounds slam into the rocks. Contact left. One Marine yells. Mercer ducks lower. The machine gun is mounted on an armored pickup truck, its barrel glowing as it spits tracer fire across the hillside. If that weapon locks onto them, the fight will end quickly. Mercer grabs his radio. Osprey, this is Spartan 1. Static. Nothing. The aircraft is already gone. Extraction won't come for hours, which means the mission is now entirely theirs. Ramirez crawls beside him, breathing hard. Sir, they're fueling the launchers. Mercer risks another glance over the ridge. Ramirez is right. Two large missile trucks are now fully raised, their launch tubes angled toward the Gulf. A radar vehicle nearby begins, rotating slowly, scanning the skies above Iran. Mercer understands the timeline instantly. Minutes, maybe less. If those missiles launch, they'll target the U.S. carrier strike group patrolling the Gulf. And once that happens, the war becomes unstoppable. Another burst of machine gun fire tears across the ridge. A Marine screams as a bullet punches into his shoulder. Doc, someone shouts. Mercer's jaw tightens. There are 8 Marines facing an entire missile convoy. But there is one advantage. The explosives. Mercer pulls the demolition charges from his vest. C4 blocks with timed detonators. Enough to destroy the launch vehicles if they can get close enough. He looks at Ramirez. We're not holding this ridge. Ramirez nods immediately. Mercer points toward the convoy below. We're going down there. Ramirez stares at the trucks, the soldiers, the machine gun blazing across the desert. That's suicide. Mercer loads a fresh magazine into his rifle. Maybe? He glances again at the missile launchers aimed toward the dark horizon of the Persian Gulf. But if those fire, he finished the thought quietly, thousands die. Mercer slings the explosives over his shoulder. Then he gives the order. Assault team with me. The Marines rise from. The Marines surge down the ridge like shadows breaking from the storm. Captain Daniel Mercer runs at the front, boots sliding through loose desert sand as tracer rounds tear past him. The machine gun from the convoy hammers the hillside behind them, chewing apart the rocks they had used for cover seconds earlier. Move, Mercer shouts. Ramirez and 2 other Marines sprint beside him, rifles up, firing short controlled bursts toward the trucks. Below them, the convoy is now fully alive. Soldiers of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps scramble between vehicles, shouting orders as they try to understand where the attack is coming from. Some fire blindly into the sandstorm. Others rush to defend the missile launchers. Mercer slides behind a parked fuel truck, just as a burst of automatic fire slices across the sand where he had been running. Bullets punch into the metal tank above his head. Ramirez dives beside him, machine gun still up. Mercer leans out quickly. 50 meters away, the armored pickup truck sits angled toward the ridge. Its heavy weapon continues to spit tracer rounds into the storm. the gunner silhouetted against the vehicle headlights. Mercer raises his rifle. 3 shots. The gunner jerks backward and collapses over the turret. The machine gun falls silent. But the moment of relief lasts only seconds. A new sound begins rising across the desert. A low mechanical whine. Mercer looks toward the missile trucks. Technicians are climbing down from the launch platforms. The radar dish beside them rotates faster now, scanning the skies above Iran. Then the launch tubes begin to move. Ramirez sees it too. Sir, they're locking targets. Mercer's pulse hammers. If the radar has already acquired ships in the Persian Gulf, the missiles could fire at any moment. He pulls the demolition charges from his pack. 2 teams, Mercer orders. Plant the charges on those launch trucks. Marine named Collins grabs to C4 blocks and sprints toward the first launcher. Gunfire erupts again. An Iranian soldier appears from behind a radar truck and fires wildly. Collins drops him with a quick burst, then leaps onto the side ladder of the missile vehicle. Mercer covers him, firing at shapes moving through the dust. More Iranian troops are arriving from the rear convoy trucks. Headlights cut through the sandstorm like blades. More contacts. Ramirez yells. Collins reaches the launcher. He slams the C4 against the metal chassis and begins arming the detonator. 30 seconds. But just as he finishes, a spotlight snaps on. Blinding white light floods the convoy. Mercer turns toward its source. Another armored vehicle has arrived from the highway, and mounted on top of it, a heavy autocannon. The turret begins rotating toward the Marines. Mercer feels cold realization spread through him. If that cannon opens fire, there will be nothing left of them. The gun barrel stops moving, pointing directly at Mercer's team, and the trigger begins to pull. The autocannon fires. A thunderous blast shreds the night as the first shell slams into the fuel truck behind Captain Daniel Mercer. The explosion hurls metal and fire across the convoy, knocking Mercer flat into the sand. Heat roars over him. Burning fuel pours across the desert floor like liquid fire. Mercer coughs, ears ringing, vision blurred by smoke and dust. For a moment the battlefield is nothing but chaos, shouting voices, screaming engines, tracer rounds slicing through the storm. Then training takes over. He forces himself upright. Across the convoy, the armored vehicle's autocannon rotates again, searching through the flames for its next target. Ramirez grabs Mercer's shoulder. Charges are set. Mercer looks toward the missile launcher. Collins is already jumping down from the ladder. 30 seconds on the detonator. But there's still another launcher, and it's the one already aligned toward the waters of the Persian Gulf. Mercer watches in horror as technicians from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps finish locking the missile into firing position. One of them slams a control panel closed. Another soldier raises a radio. They're seconds from launching. Mercer knows the truth immediately. Even if the first explosives destroy half the convoy, that missile will still fire. And once it launches, American ships patrolling the Gulf will have almost no warning. Ramirez sees the same thing. Sir, we're too late. Mercer's jaw tightens. No. He checks the timer on the detonator. Collins armed. 20 seconds. If that charge explodes while they're still inside the convoy, they'll be killed by the blast, which means they must finish the job before the first explosion. Mercer grabs one last block of C4. I'm taking the second launcher. Ramirez stares at him. That thing fires in seconds. Mercer chambers another round. Then I'd better move fast. He sprints through the smoke toward the final missile truck. Gunfire erupts instantly. 2 Iranian soldiers open fire from behind a radar vehicle. Bullets slam into the sand around Mercer's boots. He dives behind the missile launcher, breath heaving. Above him, the huge cylindrical missile sits locked inside its launch tube, aimed toward the dark horizon. The launch crew is only a few meters away. One of them turns. Their eyes meet. The soldier reaches for his rifle. Mercer fires first. The man collapses against the truck, but another technician slams his hand onto the launch console. The missile system begins to whine. Ramirez's voice screams across the radio. 10 seconds on the charge. Mercer climbs onto the launcher ladder, hands shaking as he slaps the final C4 block against the base of the missile tube. He twists the timer. 5 seconds. But below him, the launch system suddenly ignites. A roar of fuel floods the night. The missile is beginning its launch sequence, and Mercer is still standing on top of it. The missile ignites beneath Captain Daniel Mercer's boots. A violent roar erupts from the launch tube as flames blast downward into the desert sand. The entire launcher trembles violently, metal screaming under the force of the engine. Mercer feels the heat instantly. It's like standing over a jet engine. Below him, fire and smoke explode across the convoy as the missile's launch sequence begins. The ground shakes beneath the trucks, dust and burning fuel swirling through the night air. Ramirez's voice explodes in his headset. Charge goes in 5. Mercer looks down at the block of C4 he just armed. The timer flashes. 4 seconds. But the missile is already moving. The launch tube lifts higher as the rocket motor reaches full thrust. The missile begins sliding upward from its housing. White-hot exhaust blasting across the launcher platform. Mercer realizes something terrifying. If he jumps now, he might survive the blast. But if the C4 detonates too early, the explosion could still allow the missile to escape the launcher and continue toward the ships in the Persian Gulf. And if that happens, everything they risk tonight means nothing. Below him, Iranian soldiers from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps scatter in panic as the burning convoy becomes a storm of gunfire and explosions. One soldier spots Mercer standing on the launcher. He raises his rifle. Mercer doesn't even look at him. His eyes stay locked on the missile slowly rising from the tube. 3 seconds. The missile climbs higher, its guidance fins unfolding as the rocket engine howls like thunder. Mercer pulls the detonator wire from his vest. Manual override. He could jump, or he could make sure the missile never leaves this desert. Ramirez shouts again over the radio. Captain, get off that thing. Mercer thinks about the ships sitting quietly in the Gulf tonight. Thousands of sailors, completely unaware of the missile rising toward them. He tightens his grip on the detonator. 2 seconds. The Iranian soldier fires. A bullet tears across Mercer's shoulder, spinning him against the launcher frame. The missile climbs higher. 1 second. Mercer forces himself upright through the pain. He presses the detonator switch and jumps. A split second later, the convoy disappears in a blinding white explosion. Fire erupts beneath the missile launcher as the C4 detonates directly against the launch system. The rocket engine tears apart mid-launch. The missile explodes into fragments of burning metal. The blast wave rolls across the desert like thunder. Ramirez and the Marines are thrown flat as flames rise hundreds of feet into the night sky above Iran. For several long seconds, everything is silent except the roar of burning vehicles. Then Ramirez looks up through the smoke and sees something terrifying. Mercer is gone. The desert burns. Flames climb into the night sky where the missile convoy once stood. Twisted metal, shattered trucks, and burning fuel scatter across the sand like wreckage from a fallen city. Ramirez pushes himself up slowly, ears ringing from the blast. Mercer, he shouts into the smoke. No answer. The explosion has silenced almost everything. Only the crackle of fire and distant ammunition cooking off inside. Destroyed vehicles breaks the stillness. The missile launchers are gone. Both of them. The radar truck lies on its side, its dish half melted in the flames. Pieces of the destroyed missile are scattered across the desert floor. Burning fragments of metal that never reached the waters of the Persian Gulf. Ramirez forces himself to stand. The other Marines begin regrouping nearby, coughing through the dust and smoke. One of them drags the wounded Marine whose shoulder was hit earlier. But Ramirez's eyes keep searching the wreckage. Captain, he calls again. Still nothing. The blast was enormous. Anyone standing near that launcher would have been thrown dozens of meters. Ramirez begins running through the destroyed convoy. Burning trucks illuminate the battlefield with flickering orange light. The bodies of soldiers from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps lie scattered around the shattered missile vehicles. Then he sees movement, a shape in the sand. Ramirez sprints toward it. Captain Daniel Mercer lies half buried beneath a sheet of twisted metal from the launcher frame. His uniform is scorched, his rifle gone, blood soaking through his shoulder where the bullet struck. But he's breathing. Barely. Ramirez drops beside him, pulling the metal away. Sir. Hey, stay with me. Mercer's eyes open slowly. For a moment he looks confused, staring at the burning wreckage around them. Then he remembers. The missile. Mercer whispers. Ramirez nods. Gone. Mercer exhales weakly. Above them, the sky begins to glow faintly on the horizon. Dawn is approaching over the desert of Iran. But the battle isn't finished. In the distance, new headlights appear along the highway leading toward a destroyed convoy. More Iranian vehicles. Reinforcements. Ramirez sees them immediately. Sir, we've got company. Mercer struggles to sit up, wincing through the pain. He looks toward the approaching lights, then at the ruined missile launchers behind them. The mission is complete, but they are still deep inside enemy territory. 8 Marines, 1 wounded officer, and now an entire response force is coming. Mercer forces himself to his feet. Set defensive positions, he says quietly. Ramirez stares at him. Sir, we're not getting out of this, are we? Mercer watches the convoy of headlights growing larger across the desert road. He gives a faint, tired smile. Not yet. The Marines spread out among the burning wreckage, rifles ready. Behind them, The destroyed missiles still burn in the sand,